right, welcome to this talk called Ready, Set, Sleep, using data to unlock better employee well-being and performance. My name is Tiina Hoffman. I'm an exercise physiologist and master trainer at Firstbeat Technologies, talking to you right now from our headquarters in central Finland. And my goal is not to actually put you to sleep during the talk, but instead to highlight the importance of sleep for performance. Here's our agenda. First, some facts about the importance of sleep for the employee and the employer, why it's so important. Then a look at heart rate variability, a physiological phenomena that looks into the body and how we use that to say that good sleep is built during the day. Then I'll share a case example and some big data, what that shows about the different kind of factors that affect sleep and what we can really learn from that. And in the end, I'll share some lockdown takeaways, meaning some data that we gathered during the lockdown period to see what was different from previous times and what we can learn from that. Start with some facts about inadequate sleep. American Society of Sleep Medicine and Sleep Research Society says that sleeping less than 7 hours per night on a regular basis is associated with adverse mental and physical health outcomes. And here's a long list of different issues correlated with short sleep. And it's a good time for each of you now to actually reflect on this. How long did you sleep last night? What about on average last week? Was it well below 7? And be honest now, or are you close to the 7 or maybe 8 hours? Because this is a key factor for all of us. Sleep deficiency is negatively affecting attention, memory, learning, our ability to function well at work. And also we know that people who have a very physically stressful or mentally stressful work actually need more sleep. Whereas instead we tend to do just the opposite. When the load of life in our lives increases or stress increases, we start cutting on sleep to make sure that we get everything done. And instead the mindset should be just the opposite, to allow us just extra sleep when there is more stress in our lives. Here is some numbers, powerful statistics about the importance of sleep of interest to any company who wants to have a high-performing workforce. 30 billion pounds, the estimated annual cost of lost sleep to the UK economy, or 200,000 working days lost to lack of sleep in the UK. Or looking at the fatigue costs to the UK economy in work accidents. These are powerful numbers that say that a tired employee is simply not going to perform as well at work as a well-rested one, highlighting the economic impact of sleep or lack of sleep actually. And some common arguments that I hear quite a bit and how I'd like to try to sort of counter them. I can manage with 5 hours of sleep. Surprisingly, many people feel like they belong to this group of people who don't need to sleep much. But experts would say that only a tiny percent of us really can truly manage with 5 hours of sleep. So sure, you can manage, you can get by, maybe survive, but for how long and at what level of performance? And if you aim to really thrive in life, then you really should be prioritizing sleep more. Rest is for the old and the weak, or I'll sleep when I'm dead even. Sounding a little bit silly, but the fact is it's easy to say no to this one because statistics show very clearly that young people in their 20s and 30s are already increasingly suffering from burnout and exhaustion. So it's clearly a serious and real issue, and people at all ages need sleep. I don't have time to sleep. This is a big one, probably really common. Even people who, in their hearts, they know that they should be sleeping more, but then they don't bring it to reality. When they get busy, life takes over and they start cutting on sleep. So instead, we should think about it in a way that it should be so high in our priority list that we just simply don't compromise on that. A non-negotiable that we only touch if it's some kind of a real exceptional situation. And it's up to each of us to really make that choice and put sleep high on the priority list. Beer is the best recovery drink, or alcohol helps me recover. Quite a few people like to think that that's a good strategy to help them sleep. And unfortunately, my here means that data clearly shows that as a recovery strategy, alcohol is not a good one. And I'll share an example of that from our database. Then looking at heart rate variability as a window into our physiology, because I want to explain a little bit what the method that my examples are based on, what it means. So we basically put a little device on people that measures their every heartbeat during day, all night, and then we measure the time between heartbeats. That's what heart rate variability means, the beat-to-beat changes in heart rate. And that tells us what's happening in the autonomic nervous system. It has two parts, the sympathetic, the stress system, and parasympathetic, the recovery system. And by analyzing heart rate variability, we are able to start seeing how this balance in the nervous system is working. We use that as a window to create a digital model of the physiology and then provide some concrete insights to the persons from their lifestyle. So we go beyond data, we use the data to turn it into such a format that it teaches people how their body is reacting to different parts of life, to help them better stress management skills, better sleeping skills, and also how they should exercise. And also a few examples of what in concrete level, what that means. Here is two 24-hour graphs from that kind of a Firstbeat data. The red color here means stress. It's a sympathetic nervous system dominance, that's activation. It's normal and okay, but then we should also see the green color, which means recovery, the body slowing down. And here's two examples where it's easy to say that busy days won't go away. We are always going to have those stressful busy days. But if we make good choices during the day, it clearly improves the odds of us getting a good sleep. The person on the top has made those kind of good choices. They've done a bit of physical activity to balance off the busy work day. Then they've also done a meditation session in the evening and doing a little bit of reading right before bedtime. You can see the red turning into green already in the evening, and then a nice restorative sleep period. Whereas the person on the bottom has slept the same amount of time, 7 hours, but it's mostly stress. So the busyness of the day, the busy work day, followed by computer games and chores, emails right before bedtime, their activation level and buzz has kind of kept up at a high level, and when they go to bed, they might fall asleep, but the restorative quality of that sleep is not very good. So high quality sleep is built during the day with those kind of choices. And here are some examples of what those choices in practice for different people might mean. Some of them being clearly individual choices, up to each of us to remember to eat and drink regularly during the day, make sure we have some pleasant activities to do outside of work, taking care of our fitness. I'll share an example from the database that shows a clear correlation between your fitness and your ability to recover. And then evening routine is a really big one, probably the key factor that we try to emphasize to people, to understand that the 30 minutes to 2 hours before bedtime is the key period to start making the kind of decisions that support sleep. Slowing down, switching off devices, switching off the mind and the body, not doing too many things, relaxing so that your body is able to get some sleep. But then a couple of the points here clearly have to do a lot with the company culture, making sure that it's possible to do that. We always talk about you should take some breaks during the workday instead of just go all the time. But does the company culture support that? It's a very important one for the company as a whole to discuss this, to make sure that when somebody does take a 10-minute tea break or relaxation break or stretching, whatever it is, it's acceptable and okay. Because if everyone else just goes back to their computer, then it seems like something lazy, and it's going to be harder for the individual to do those right things. Same goes with evening email habits. Very common if everybody is expected to answer emails at all the time, and you are seeing that others are doing that too, that pattern takes over, and then people can't do the right choices in the evening. But if it comes from the top, it's decided that you are not expected to answer to your emails after 8 p.m. It's okay to get back to them in the morning. Then it makes it easier for people to do that right choice before they go to bed. Facilitators of good sleep, two very powerful things that comes from our data. Fitness is the first one, meaning that very clearly we see that if you are in good fitness, you also have a better ability to recover. From poor fitness to moderate, good fitness, and top level in the bars here, and then on the left-hand side, minutes of recovery during sleep. The lower your fitness level is, the less recovery minutes, that good quality recovery you have at night. Basically meaning that fitness gives you the ability to handle stress and then start recovering better when it's time for that. Whereas if you are in very low fitness, then the daily life stresses you so much more that it's much harder to start recovering. This is good news in a way for people who are in very low fitness right now, because even a small investment in their fitness is also a great investment in their ability to sleep. Second facilitator of good sleep is avoiding alcohol, kind of arguing that maybe beer after all is not that great recovery drink that we would like to think. It's a very clear dose-response relationship showing that the more units of alcohol you have, the less minutes of quality recovery you have during your sleep. And the trend holds for all the age groups, for men and women alike. So that's a powerful learning lesson and eye-opener for many people when they see that how big of an effect that has, and it helps them make better choices on that going forward. Here's an individual case, a busy marketing manager. This was their first measurement from this type of an assessment, and their data clearly showed them that their life was very busy and non-stop and stressful. That's subjectively how they felt, and the physiological data supported that. All the scores calculated from the results showed that there was very few breaks, very little physical activity, and their body stayed on even at sleep, while they were sleeping. This was a real wake-up call for her, and she set 2 specific goals with her coach. One was to increase the amount of exercise so she could improve her quite low fitness, and the second was to consciously add some breaks into her days. And here's an example a couple months later when she did a follow-up assessment. The blue color here, those are her exercise sessions. So she was in a situation where she was able to take her bike to work and back a couple of days a week, 2 or 3 days a week, about 20 minutes each direction. But even just that small addition of exercise gave her good health benefits from those days. So it doesn't mean hours of exercise to really get the good benefits. And then she added a couple of conscious relaxation breaks into her days. Relaxation during work here. At the end of workday, you can see some green bars here before the workday ends, and then again in the evening, right before bedtime. And the sleep score was significantly better across all of the measurement days. So showing that she didn't have to overhaul her lifestyle and change everything, but just integrate a couple of small, meaningful changes and see some concrete results. Of course, in addition to the individual results and insights that each person who undergoes an assessment like this gets, we can also provide some anonymized group data about the key concerns for the company's workforce. So we can provide an anonymized group summary that shows how on average the team is doing in the area of sleep, stress management, exercise, and overall. It allows the company to put some effort into the areas that are maybe problematic, providing some workshops or lectures, and then you can do a follow-up and see if the company as a whole is able to improve their result going forward. And then a couple of things to close off from the lockdown period, what the data shows. We did thousands of measurements in the spring and summer of 2020, and from that time, when we compared that to previous springtime, so the same time of year, but in a more normal time period, we found that this spring people actually had more minutes of recovery in their work days and their leisure time, so that green color in the report that I showed before, and also their sleep duration increased by 15 up to 30 minutes depending on the group. So because the pace of life slowed down so much, we were not taking commutes, we were not going to hobbies, we were staying around the house, the physiological recovery response was actually better, even if there was, of course, a lot of mental worry and concern and stress involved with the period as well. So this was good to see, and we can now start thinking how to keep that. At the same time, we saw that people exercise a lot less, especially during the work week. Particularly the statistics that shows that the amount of really passive days under 1,000 steps quadrupled. So people were not doing any movement except going from the bedroom to the kitchen and to the office in the same house. And that's something that we need to try to emphasize going forward, that even during remote work, we have to look after our physical fitness and activity. So some final questions for pondering here on going forward, how we could keep the positive learnings and lessons that the data shows and people's experience shows as life starts to return to normal. And since the topic here today is particularly sleep, so I would highlight this center bar here. How can we keep sleep a top priority? Even as we start going back into our own hobbies and our kids go to hobbies, we start commuting, life starts filling up again. How can we keep that extra amount of sleep that we realized we could take during the lockdown to get as much sleep as our body needs instead of cutting down on that? And then how can we keep the downtime when the normal buzz returns? Instead of having our schedules packed from morning to evening, the way life was during the lockdown, it's not going to be quite like that. But how can we appreciate that little bit of switching off and slow time? It's actually beneficial for our health and our performance also going forward. Finding the right balance for each company between, for example, remote work and office work, so that people can find a sustainable way to handle that. And we'll discuss these questions more next week in our roundtable discussion. So next Wednesday, feel free to join us on our Firstbeat session when we're going to talk about what we can learn from the lockdown and how the company culture can adjust to that. So thank you very much. Sleep well. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tiina. That was just so interesting, and definitely some lessons for me there, I think, about making sleep, the importance of making sleep a priority. So looking at the poll results, it looks like it's 50-50. So I just wondered whether you had some thoughts around that, and that was what you were expecting.
Yeah, that's pretty close to what I would expect. And I think it highlights what I said earlier during the talk, that most of us, we know that we should sleep 8 hours or 7.5 hours or whatever it is, but as life gets busy, we don't do that. So half of us who are maybe a bit more enlightened because we are attending a conference like this, we still, half of us feel like we are constantly sleeping less than we need to. So it's a good reminder that hopefully we can bring that percent up of people who feel like they get enough sleep from night to night.
Great. I've got a really interesting question actually here from Joanne McGillan, which is possibly contrary to some of the data that's coming in. She says, my sleep pattern has completely changed since working from home. I used to sleep a solid 8 to 9 hours every night, and now I'm waking constantly. Would you say that working from home has a direct impact? And if so, what can employees do to combat that?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because even if I'm aware that our data shows that on average people seem to be sleeping a bit better and a bit longer, that's not the fact for everyone. And I also know many cases where people find that it's harder to sleep. I think one of the reasons is probably the difficulty of drawing the line between home and work, especially if you're remote working, so you're there in the same space all of the time. So it's more tempting to kind of keep working at odd hours. Maybe you're educating your kids during the day and you're having to work in the evenings. So you might not be able to obey the sort of the normal rhythm and routine that you're used to when you go to the office. And then when you close the office door, it's easier to say that now that's done. So I'm sure that's one of the things. And then, of course, just the worry and the concern and the fear that we have, it's difficult to tune that out. I've certainly noticed that myself too, that some nights these things, they are playing in your mind, and all we can do is do our best to try to empty the mind in the time before sleep and do some kind of strategies to try to help leave those kind of things behind so we could get that good sleep. And maybe just also realize that waking up a few times per night as we get older, especially, it's very, very normal, and it happens to most people. And then you just try to relax your mind and go back to sleep after that.
Brilliant. And actually, we've just had another question in, the kind of reverse of that really, is saying, can you comment on the potential adverse effects of too much sleep, especially because more people at home may be getting more naps and things?
Yeah, I mean, studies and research clearly show that excessive sleep in general is not good either. So most people need somewhere between 7 and 8 hours. Maybe after a tough day, you might need 9. But if you start sleeping 10 or more hours, often it's a sign of some kind of a problem. Maybe there's some health issues, or the quality of sleep is so poor that you feel like you just keep needing more sleep. So a regular sleep rhythm clearly for all of us would be ideal. Determine what your personal need is as closely as possible, and then try to schedule that on all 7 days of the week as close to each other as possible. So not completely switching your schedule for a weekend, but sticking to a pretty much the same, at least very close to a similar routine on the weekdays and weekends. And on the napping, I think the idea of a short power nap can be good, especially if you feel like you are maybe slightly under the amount of sleep that you really need, or you are having some sleep issues. So a short power nap after work, 3 or 4 or 5 in the afternoon, for example, it can be a good energizer and it can actually help sleep, but it really needs to be short, 15 to 20 minutes, maybe 25 at the very, very most. But if you start napping an hour in the after work, it's inevitably going to influence your ability to get that full sleep at night then. So keep the naps very short if you feel like you need one of those.
Absolutely, definitely lots to think about. And I think, it's one of those things that is going to increasingly be something that employers focus on. So thank you, Tiina. We're going to wrap up this session now. I can see that the vendor presentations are just starting, so don't be shy. Do enter your chosen demonstration via the My Itinerary and have a bit of a different interaction now by chatting to people in the video rooms. So we'll see you again soon.